Welcome to NCC Unplugged, the podcast from Norwin Christian Church where conversations, community, and culture converge.
All right, welcome to another episode. I am joined with our tech and media director, Matt Mastroianni.
Hello, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
And my name is Jeff.
Jeff, this is Jeff Terpstra, our preaching minister that I'm joined with to my right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Why'd you look down in your arm when you said
I
right?
always get...
You still do that L thing? Hey, that's okay. Well, the reason we are joined together today, we did a prayer emphasis in January.
Yes.
And technology had a lot to do with it this year.
It really did, yeah.
So in years past, we've done... every year we've really tried to have like a specific focus for January, like kick the year off right, add some elements beyond just a sermon series with what we're doing. And so last few years we've had a prayer room here at the church. It's been opened. We did 24 hours of prayer to end that, and that's been really, really good. And just neat seeing people sign up for 2 a.m. to come to the church building to pray. But something I came across, and it wasn't our idea, it's something we stole. But they told us to, so
we borrowed it.
So we borrowed it. Is something called Prayer.global.
Yes.
And I got to experience at something called the International Conference on Missions. It's something that me and my wife and family, we really try to get to every year if it's close enough. It travels different places in the United States. And they did this as a large group. So if you don't know what Prayer.global is, if you weren't able to participate with us, let me give you a bit of a rundown of what it is. So Prayer.global has outlined just over 4,700 so people groups or territories or states around the world. And you scan a QR code or you connect to a prayer lap. And a prayer lap is praying for all of those 4,700 some territories one time. And that's a prayer lap around the world. And so they give you the tools to do it as a church, to create your own prayer lap. And so everybody that like scans your QR code or goes through your website goes to your prayer lap, and it gives each person that connects one territory.
Yeah.
And then it gives you a minute countdown, and you pray for that one territory for that minute. And as it's counting down, you can scroll down the website and it gives you statistics of how many people don't know Jesus,
right? How
many people know of Jesus, but then also the third one is how many people follow Jesus. And it'll give you statistics on that. It will give you typically a scripture to read that includes that statistic in it with scripture. So it like kind of personalizes scripture to that country. It gives you a picture of the country, and it says what in this picture needs prayer, or what in this country based on this picture do you think needs prayer? And it kind of, I like the pictures. We'll get into it more later. But then they give you another verse, and you kind of finish your prayer. And so that's really cool because you can specifically pray for the population, the picture, you use that territory's name. And so it's just so cool. And then you can, pray multiple times for that. Our goal as a church was to pray throughout the month of January and complete one lap.
Right.
And so we were able to accomplish that in less than a month.
26 days.
26 days, which was so cool. And it was really neat because Matt knew that behind the scenes. You were watching it.
Yep.
It happened during our first service on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
On Sunday morning, at 9:20 a.m., we completed our lap, which was during that first 8:45 service. So that was really cool. Like when we went to announce it, I thought we were actually going to do a prayer in service, and then the slide went up that you created to say like we are 100% complete, which was so cool.
Yeah. That was really cool. Just to kind of start off as a church body at the beginning of the year with a common goal in mind, and then be able to just complete that in, we just, I think arbitrarily picked 30 days. Like, let's get this done in January.
Yeah.
And just to see us get it done before that. Now we're on our second prayer lap, and whenever this posts, who knows what prayer lap we may be on then.
Yeah. And we'll keep going. I mean, if people are using that, it's not like something we hold on to in our house, to the church. It's a technology that's just being used.
Yeah.
And so you can, if you want to participate, just go to prayer.global. They actually have a list of all the ongoing prayer laps. So like if another church is doing it or another organization, or they just have it on their website. So you just go and click prayer and it pops right up.
Yep.
And what was neat about our church was like, we accomplished it. That's not to say in an arrogant way, but there's something to say like, I am contributing to what our church body is doing.
Yes.
There's something physical and present when you participate in a church body. Scripture over and over again emphasizes being part of this body, and the letters are addressed to a specific body. And like, there's just something tangible about that. And I think this technology was used in that way, which is just a cool element. That it's like, when we had the prayer room here at the church before, it's like, well, how many people are using the prayer room? Well, I don't like you. I'm going, but I don't see anybody else going because we're not passing at the same time. I don't know. It's just intangible that way.
Right. Where you have those numbers on your screen at all times. And what was really neat for me to witness too is when we would be getting together on a Sunday morning for service, just kind of hanging out in the lobby and hearing different people talk about it.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
like, I didn't know this was even a place, or, I didn't know where this was, or so there are a lot of eye-opening experiences that I've heard, that I've experienced, that my family's experienced, that have been really, really cool. So I think what I've heard from a lot of people already is, out of all the prayer initiatives that we've done, this one was one of their all-time favorites.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I mean, I like the fact, and I don't know if you know this, you could go in and actually change the length of time that you pray for each.
Okay.
But it's defaulted to a minute. And I like the fact during this past month that there had been times where I would just end up like wasting time normally. But I would be like, you know what? Rather than just scrolling through, YouTube or Facebook or something, like, I'm going to take that time and pray.
That's huge.
And I've heard other people doing that same exact thing. So,
someone I saw on their Facebook page, like they're doing it with their kids, which is awesome. Like, this is such an easy thing to do as a parent with your kids. You're not creating, some prayer schedule or doing all this research, but then it prompted them to do more research.
Yes.
So they go, why is the population, why is there such a disparity between those that know Jesus and those that don't? Let me go research this. Oh, there's a Muslim country. Oh, like this. And where in India is this? Like, India is such a populous country. They had a lot of little tiny dots on the map. Yeah. Like, they would go and research it. And I was like, that is so cool. Like, prayer is leading them to have a heart for these people.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just 5 or 10 minutes, but to let your kids' curiosity lead you to these places.
Right.
Like, that was really cool. So prayer.global is one initiative of this technology that's being used. And off the top of my head, I forget, I looked again this morning at the group that's behind it. But what was really cool, like when I heard about this at ICOM, is like, we give this away for free. Like, we paid a lot of website designers and I don't even know the job titles of these people to create this type of technology, programmers. And they're giving it away for free because they believe in it. They believe it's kingdom minded. We as a church didn't have to pay to create a prayer lap.
Right.
And that is just, when I heard the heart behind it, I was like, oh yeah, even more. I want to do this.
Well, just having somewhat of a background in web design and tech and media and everything, that was one thing too. As I'm doing these prayers, I'm thinking, like, how did they do this? Like, there's a lot of work. Yeah, a lot of work that went into this for sure. And then for them to, just give it away really shows the heart of what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Did you use the app at all or just on desktop?
I used the app mostly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I really did it just on desktop.
Oh, okay. All right.
And so, I mean, even that, to have their own app and for it to work with everything.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing too. After January's done, I plan on having it up, still accessible on our website under the event tab. It will be a drop down that kind of just lives there. Yeah. Because I definitely, it's such a great thing.
Yeah. And if, if this became your daily prayer rhythm or part of it, man,
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Keep using that.
Were there anything that like really stood out to you in doing your prayers? There's some stood out to me.
So I think the pictures are what stood out to me.
Okay.
I'm a visual person. That's like how my memory works. Like if I picture where I was in that moment, it's more of a vivid memory. So I think I just responded to that, and I think I understood what they're doing with the picture. So I think it would probably just be like a Google image that came from that picture,
Right.
or from that territory. It wasn't like a Christian picture per se. Like sometimes it was somebody on the road, like it was just a car. I had one that was just like a roundabout, and I was like, okay, well, what's here? But it just those little details of like, oh, but I can see this country looks like 20 years behind our country, and I can see there's poverty over there in that corner a little bit because of that beggar over there. And so like, but other people responded to the pictures differently. Like, they thought it would be more like a Christian picture, like a church meeting, right? Or something like that.
Okay.
Or like, so I think just the way the technology is, because they had to curate 4,000 pictures, maybe it was a more automated thing than others would have liked.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. No, I get that. Yeah. I know for me, the little stick figures, the people icon, whenever they would list how many non-believers, followers, Christians, really stood out. A lot of the ones that we did, like there was one, it was 1 out of every 600 people were followers of Jesus. And so I put that into perspective. That is like, if you fill our worship center with the people from all 3 services, and there's only 1 out of the entire filled room that's a Christian. There was another one that I got that was 1 out of 10,000.
Wow.
And they listed, on the screen, there were 10,000 little people that I just scrolled and scrolled and scrolled.
Puts it in perspective.
It puts it in so much perspective. And again, my mind being a sports fan, you go to like sports stadiums and the size of things and everything. So, one was like 1 in 4,000. I'm like, okay, Peterson Event Center at Pitt, that's about 4,000 or 5,000. So like one person in an entire filled stadium would be the follower of Jesus. Like it was shocking. We always hear and we always say, going out and preaching the gospel to the lost. And you pray that God would send missionaries out to the lost. But to me, it was never real. Almost like I couldn't grasp on to just how many lost people there are out there. And that's one thing that just like, it was mind blowing and sad too, but also a good reminder on why we need to be urged and move forward with proclaiming the gospel.
So they also have other tools that they use. I don't know. I think it's the parent site I didn't write it down. I think it's prayer.tools actually.
Okay.
Let me back up before we go there. Something I thought was interesting on the prayer.global website. So it's pretty new technology. Only 32 laps have been done so far.
Yeah.
And we're one of those.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yep.
And so we'll, like Matt said, we'll continue using that. So it is prayer.tools. And that's another one of their websites where they talk about some of the different things. And one of the tools is prayer.global. But one thing that prayer.tools does that I thought was interesting, and it's coming up, they do a very focused prayer during the time of Ramadan.
Sure.
So for those that don't know, Ramadan is this period of fasting and prayer for Muslims. And it's coming up. I think it starts February 27th, if I read it right. And so I think it lasts 30 days or one full month of Ramadan. And so one statistic they had was that how many Muslims only know one Christian? Like they know one Christian.
Okay.
So like some of these Muslim countries, so 1.6 billion people only know one Christian. Jeez. So not one Christian for 1.6, but like
right.
There are 1.6 billion people in the world that have only ever known one Christian. Everybody else in their life is a different religion or Muslim like they are. And so I thought that was mind blowing. Like some of you said, like puts in perspective of some of those things. And so on that website, they're trying to do nonstop prayer for that whole month. And so like what we've done for our prayer room is you can sign up for 15, 30 or 1 hour slots. And you do it, there's 11 different languages. So depending on what language you speak, you sign up for your language of prayer. Then it brings you to specific territories to pray for. So you can pray for the Muslims in Egypt. You can pray for the Muslims in Manhattan, New York. You can pray for Muslims, like just some different key spots. And so that, just looking through that, like the way they're organizing it, the way they're using technology for really focused. And so I haven't signed up, but I want to. I don't think I'll sign up for like the specific slots because my days are just like, I don't know if every day at 8 a.m. I can do, 30 minutes, but I can pray for that territory. And so I might sign up for a territory to do something specific. And then what it said is after you sign up, it will send you some prayer prompts and some like a PDF document to go through. So I thought that was really cool too, is like, they don't just let you hang out there, be like, okay, good luck. Yeah. Just like Prayer.Global, they give you some very specific things to pray for.
That's what I found very helpful too with Prayer.Global was the prompts. I found myself, I would use them, but then there were some times where I would just, whatever country or territory it was, I would just pray over it, my own prayer. But yeah, it was really cool too, as a family that's very busy and on the go all the time. This past month found us more often than not, like before bed, before saying goodnight to the kids. Like the kids, especially Levi and Juliet, would be like, "Oh, let's do a prayer," and we would get done with one, and Levi would like, "Let's do another one." So it was cool. Very, very cool experience.
So one thing I'll ask you, do you think it increased your sense of urgency for the work that needs to be done for Christ?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Like I said, just putting a visualization to how many people there are in the world, how many territories that I've never even heard of in my entire life. And then how many lost there are out there. Just in my own area of media and tech had me like, okay, what can I do to help spread the gospel better? So that's one of their missions. Like I guess maybe a mission statement. They encourage extraordinary prayer through the fulfillment of the Great Commission in our generation. Extraordinary and urgent prayer for the fulfillment. So there's an urgency and a focus. And I thought just that word urgency, I was like, I think we experienced that in our church. There's a sense of urgency of like, we need to get it done in January, but an urgency of like, this isn't a game we're playing. Right.
Like this isn't like, oh, we're going to have fun and one day we'll settle down and take this thing serious. It's like, no, if we believe in heaven and hell, if we believe Jesus is the Savior, people need to know about him.
Yeah. To that point too, there was another prompt in some of them that would list, in the next 100 hours, there's this many people in this country that will pass away without knowing Christ. And like I'm getting chills thinking about it. Like that's like those people are lost for eternity. So how much more of a urgency does that put on us to fulfill what we can here and supporting missions and missionaries?
So to kind of broaden our scope a little bit of this podcast, I want to talk a little bit about prayer. Because I think we can often sometimes question like, well, why are we praying? What's the point of praying? Like if God already knows my heart, he already knows my request, then why am I coming to him? And sometimes I just want to say like, well, because he told us to.
Yeah.
Like we do, we do because there's a sense of obeying. Okay. But we've just talked about how a simple online tool can bring us into a better space with that. So like what else is out there that maybe does motivate us beyond, okay, it's the right thing to do. So we'll start with one passage here from Hebrews 4. Let me see what verses I was going to include in this one. 15 and 16. It says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, but yet did not sin. So let us approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need." So this is comparing Jesus, and the book of Hebrews does this a lot, Old Testament, and how Jesus is better than the things of the Old Testament. He's a better high priest. High priests are those that go between you and God, because you are not good enough to be in the presence of God. And so you bring your sacrifice to the priest who sacrifices it, hoping to atone for the sins that you've done. Okay, Jesus is better because we don't have a high priest who's unlike us. Actually, he is like us. He can empathize in our weaknesses because he became human. This is the really cool thing. This maybe is off track a little bit. Is like, we needed someone that was like us, but we also needed someone that was like God. That's impossible except through Jesus, who is God, but came down to be like us. Okay, so he's tempted every way, just as we are, but yet he didn't sin. So that actually makes us more confident in approaching God's throne with confidence to receive mercy and find grace. One translation says, draws you closer.
Okay.
That word confidence draws you closer. And I've used the illustration before of like, who's confident enough to wake up a king in the middle of the night because they're thirsty and they need water? Like, no one other than the child, right? Like, and partly maybe in their, okay, this isn't a sermon, Matt. So we are because like in our prayers is that drawing close to the throne. And so part of prayer is like, why wouldn't I want to do that?
Right.
Why wouldn't I want to approach him with confidence in these requests that I have for mercy and grace to help us in our time of need? Now, our January focus was more on others and their need, but that's part of prayer too.
Well, I think too, if you look just on our earthly experience as parents, right? We may know what's going on in our kids' lives without them necessarily telling us, just because we know, because we're parents. But when they come to us and then tell us or talk to us about something that they're going through, even though we already know, that strengthens the bond between the two. They're showing that they trust you enough to be able to talk to you. And hopefully you're pouring out that love and empathy for whatever they're going through at that time. So I can see a similarity with a relationship with God through prayer.
For sure.
Yeah.
And our whole being saved is to have a relationship with God.
Right.
And so then a demonstration of that relationship is communication.
Yeah.
And how much joy, going back to your illustration, how much joy you have. And like, I knew, we'll say son, I knew my son was mad because you could tell, but the fact that he came to me and talked to me about it and confided in me and is exploring that emotion with me, and like, you have joy that he can do that. And then you empathize with him so, and that's just as humans.
Yeah.
How much more in a spiritual sense with our Father, with Jesus mediating for us, of like, he has joy in us just coming into his arms and saying like, I can't do it. I've tried to do it, or I'm mad in this situation, whatever it might be. So,
yeah. One thing too, just prayer in general, I know recently in my life has been just praying the right prayer by not putting God into a box. And we've talked about this before, but sometimes, I know for me struggling with, certain sins or whatnot, it's like, please, when this happens, like, help me not to do this, or help me to avoid temptation here, or not give in to temptation. Where I specifically remember in the one day, I was like, you know what, rather than praying that you would help me, just like, I trust you to take this out of my life completely. And to this point, once I prayed that prayer, it's been a total transformation for me. Something like I've never experienced before with that. And then I look back and I'm like, wow, I was, I was praying by just like my worldly knowledge and what I think he might be able to do, but he could just like crush this if I ask him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And there's, maybe we'll do another podcast on prayer. This one was more kind of like our January thing. But prayer is so important. I think it's also an indication of our relationship and our trust in God. And it's like, do I just trust him just to save me, or do I trust him every day?
Right.
Like, am I asking for my daily bread from him? If I am, then that's going to be indicated in my prayers and even how often I'm praying and in my vulnerability in my prayers. There's a quick list of times God calls us to pray in the New Testament. Matthew 5, pray for those who persecute you. Matthew 6, an assumption you pray, it says, and when you pray, like, you're already doing it, like, right? Sermon on the Mount, continue Matthew, Jesus said, then this is how you should pray. Romans, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Ephesians 6, pray in the Spirit on all occasions for all kinds of prayers and requests. Philippians 4, do not be anxious about anything, but everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Colossians 4, devote yourselves to prayer. 1 Thessalonians 5, pray continually. 1 Timothy 1, I urge then, first of all, requests, prayers, intercession, thanksgiving be made for everyone. It's clear we're meant to do it,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
It's just hard. So, I don't know. I hope, our focus in January has somehow helped you in that way. It's a tool. It's a tool in the toolbox.
Right.
We think as a church, the more tools we can put out there, like this podcast, like maybe that prayer emphasis in January didn't hit home for you. Maybe this prayer, like the podcast doesn't at all, like that's fine. It's just a tool to use for you. You have your thing. Maybe your prayer is more contemplative and you got this thing where, you're in a dark room and you've found your place and that's where you've come to talk with God and that's your style of prayer. Then that works for you. That's great. We just think it's so important to have that connection with God and that be part of your relationship.
I was going to say any tool we can use in our daily lives to shut the world out and draw closer to God. To me, I'm going to use it,
So yeah, let us know if prayer.global was helpful for you. Maybe you used it in a way that we didn't talk about and might be helpful. Hopefully there's some more tools that we'll use as a church to continue in that. But we really hope that you had a great January. You were able to participate with us, or you go and explore some of those tools if you haven't already. Thanks so much for listening today.
Thank you for tuning in to NCC Unplugged. If you've enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to rate and review it and share it with your friends and family. If you are interested in learning more about Norwin Christian Church, visit our website at norwinchristianchurch.com. We also invite you to join us at NCC for one of our 3 services. Sundays at 8:45 and 10:30 a.m. and Thursdays at 7 p.m. We have engaging classes for all ages, ensuring there is something meaningful for everyone in our church community. Thanks once again for listening, and we hope you have a great week.